On a frigid Thanksgiving Day in 1929, as America teetered on the brink of the Great Depression, two rival Chicago football teams prepared to face off in a game that would etch itself into the annals of sports history. Little did the 8,000 spectators huddled in the stands of Comiskey Park know that they were about to witness a performance so extraordinary that it would stand unchallenged for nearly a century. This is the story of Ernie Nevers and the day he scored 40 points in a single NFL game, a record that remains unbroken. It's a tale of perseverance, raw talent, and the early days of professional football when legends were born on frozen fields. To understand the magnitude of Nevers' achievement, we need to transport ourselves back to 1929. Professional football was still in its infancy. The NFL was 9 years old, and the game bore little resemblance to the high-octane sport we know today. The Chicago Cardinals, predecessors of today's Arizona Cardinals, struggled both on and off the field. Their crosstown rivals, the Chicago Bears, were the darlings of the city, boasting a roster filled with future Hall of Famers. In 1929, the Cardinals' fortunes changed when Dr. David Jones, a local physician, purchased the team from founder Chris O'Brien for $12,000, equivalent to about $190,000 today. Jones was determined to turn the Cardinals' fortunes around. His first major move was to convince Ernie Nevers, a star player who had retired to pursue a baseball career, to return to football. Nevers, already a legend from his college days at Stanford, signed a $10,000 contract to serve as a player coach for the Cardinals. It was a princely sum for the time, reflecting Jones's desperation to inject star power into his struggling franchise. Ernie Nevers was a physical marvel. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing 205 pounds, he was a bruising fullback with surprising agility. His return to football was immediate news, setting the stage for a highly anticipated Thanksgiving Day clash with the Bears. The build-up to the game was intense. The Chicago Tribune billed it as Red Grange versus Ernie Nevers and Northside against Southside. It was more than just a football game. It was a battle for the soul of Chicago sports. As Thanksgiving Day dawned, a blanket of snow covered Chicago. The temperature hovered just above freezing, and a biting wind whipped across Comiskey Park. Despite the holiday and the rivalry, only 8,000 fans braved the elements to attend the game. The field was a frozen quagmire, with treacherous footing that would challenge even the most sure-footed players. But for Ernie Nevers, these harsh conditions would become the backdrop for his greatest performance. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Nevers didn't just dominate the game, he became the game. From the opening whistle, Nevers was unstoppable. He scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter alone and kicked an extra point, giving the Cardinals a 13-0 lead. The Bears simply had no answer for Nevers. He was running through them, around them, and over them. It was like watching a man play against boys. By halftime, Nevers had added another touchdown and extra point, extending the Cardinals' lead to 20-0. But he was far from finished. What's remarkable is that Nevers didn't slow down in the second half. Despite the physical toll of carrying the ball so many times on a frozen field, he seemed to get stronger as the game went on. In the third quarter, the Bears managed to score their only touchdown of the game, briefly giving their fans hope. But Nevers quickly extinguished that hope, responding with 3 more touchdowns and 2 extra points in the second half. When the final whistle blew, the scoreboard told an astonishing story. Chicago Cardinals 40, Chicago Bears 6. Even more incredibly, Ernie Nevers had scored all 40 of the Cardinals' points, 6 touchdowns and 4 extra point conversions. I've covered football for over 50 years, and I've never seen anything like it. It wasn't just the number of points, it was the way he dominated every aspect of the game. He was unstoppable as a runner, precise as a kicker, and he even played linebacker on defense. It was a complete performance in every sense. The Chicago Herald-Examiner's Edgar Munzel, in his game report, praised not just Nevers, but the entire Cardinals' offensive line, particularly tackle Duke Slater. Munzel wrote that Slater seemed the dominant figure in that forward wall which had the Bear front wobbly. What's often overlooked in discussions of Nevers' performance is the role of his teammates, especially the offensive line. Football is a team sport, and while Nevers' individual brilliance is undeniable, it was made possible by the collective effort of the Cardinals. The impact of Nevers' performance was immediate and long-lasting. It catapulted him to national fame and remains, to this day, the gold standard for individual scoring in professional football. In the nearly century since that snowy Thanksgiving Day, the NFL has evolved dramatically. Players are bigger, faster, and more specialized. Teams employ complex strategies and rotations that make it virtually impossible for a single player to dominate a game the way Nevers did. You have to remember, in 1929, players went both ways, offense and defense. There was no platoon system. Nevers was on the field for virtually every play of the game. That kind of endurance is unheard of in today's NFL. Over the years, a few players have come close to Nevers' record. In 1965, Gale Sayers of the Chicago Bears scored 36 points against San Francisco with 6 touchdowns, 4 rushing, 1 receiving, and 1 on a punt return. More recently, in 2020, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints tied the record for most touchdowns in a game with 6 rushing touchdowns on Christmas Day against the Minnesota Vikings, also totaling 36 points. What makes Nevers' record even more remarkable is its longevity. In an era where sports records fall with increasing frequency, his 40-point game has stood for over 90 years. It's a testament to both the difficulty of the achievement and the unique conditions of early professional football that allowed for such individual dominance. The 1929 season would prove to be the high point of Ernie Nevers' NFL career. He played 3 more seasons with the Cardinals before retiring for good in 1933. Despite the brevity of his professional career, Nevers left an indelible mark on the sport. In 1963, Ernie Nevers was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, cementing his legacy as one of the greatest players in the history of the game. Nevers was more than just a great player. He was a pioneer. He played in an era when professional football was still finding its footing, and he helped establish it as a legitimate sport in the American consciousness. For the Chicago Cardinals, Nevers' historic performance was a bright spot in what would be a challenging decade. Despite having one of the game's biggest stars, the team struggled to attract fans and remain financially viable. The Great Depression hit shortly after Nevers' big game, and it had a significant impact on professional sports. The Cardinals, already the second team in Chicago's pecking order, found it increasingly difficult to compete with the Bears for fans and revenue. In 1932, just 3 years after buying the team, David Jones sold the Cardinals to Charles Bidwill for $50,000. Jones had grown frustrated with the financial drain of owning a struggling franchise, and a chance conversation at a dinner party led to Bidwill's offer to purchase the team. Under Bidwill's ownership, the Cardinals would remain in Chicago until 1960, when they moved to St. Louis. In 1988, the franchise relocated again, this time to Arizona, where it remains today as the Arizona Cardinals. Ironically, the team's greatest individual performance came during one of its most challenging periods. But that's often how sports history is made, moments of brilliance shining through in unexpected times and places. As for the Chicago Bears, despite the embarrassment of the Thanksgiving Day loss, they would go on to become one of the NFL's most storied franchises. The 1929 season, in which they finished with a disappointing 4-9-2 record, proved to be an anomaly in their long history of success. The 1929 Bears team actually included several future Hall of Famers players like Red Grange, George Halas, and Patty Driscoll. But they were in a transition period, and it took a few years for them to gel into the powerhouse team they would become in the 1930s and 1940s. The contrast between the Bears' long-term success and the Cardinals' struggles in Chicago serves as a reminder of how fleeting glory can be in professional sports. While Ernie Nevers' individual achievement has stood the test of time, the fortunes of teams can rise and fall dramatically over the years. Today, the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar industry, with state-of-the-art stadiums, advanced training techniques, and a level of athletic performance that would have been unimaginable in 1929. Yet, Ernie Nevers' 40-point game remains a benchmark that modern players can only dream of reaching. Every Thanksgiving when I watch the NFL games, I can't help but think back to that snowy day in 1929. It reminds me of how far the sport has come, but also of the timeless nature of true greatness. Nevers' performance that day transcends eras. It's simply one of the greatest individual efforts in sports history. As we reflect on Ernie Nevers' historic achievement, we're reminded of the power of sports to create lasting memories and unbreakable records. In the ever-evolving world of professional football, Nevers' 40-point game stands as a testament to human potential and the enduring allure of athletic excellence. The story of Ernie Nevers and the 1929 Thanksgiving Day game is more than just a footnote in sports history. It's a window into a different era of professional football, a time when individual brilliance could shine so brightly. It reminds us of the roots of the game we love today and the shoulders of giants upon which modern players stand. On that cold Thanksgiving Day in 1929, Ernie Nevers didn't just win a football game, he etched his name into the record books and the imagination of sports fans for generations to come. His 40-point performance remains a shining example of what's possible when extraordinary talent meets perfect opportunity, a frozen moment in time when one man carried an entire team to victory and into immortality.